Welcome to the African News Review podcast, where we cut through the noise and get to the truth. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, and each week we are here to challenge the biases, prejudices, and misinformation in the Western press about Africa. Using historical context and contemporary insights, we set the record straight and reclaim the narrative. Tune in every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern as we uncover the real stories and reshape the conversations about Africa. This is the African News Review podcast, reclaiming Africa's narrative, one story at a time. Yes, greetings, and welcome again to African News Review. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla. And with me today is my co-host, Fubara and Eneli.
I'm just a guest. I'm not the co-host.
Okay. All right. You don't want to put yourself out on the limb. So she is Fubara and Eneli Esquire. She's the author Yourself Revolution. She is also author of Kwanzaa Celebration Guy, host Rethinking Freedom, 98.5 FM Killeen, Texas, co-host Women in Resistance. Welcome, sis.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The legend is back after a brief hiatus. He is Comrade Milton Allimadi. He's the author of Manufacturing 8, host Black Star News on WBAI 99.5 FM, New York. Welcome, Comrade. Welcome back.
Asante sana. Sister is either in a vehicle or she's flying in a helicopter.
Yeah. We can't.
It might be a helicopter.
No, I am in a vehicle. I'm in Galveston, Texas. I brought my sons and a mentee with me to meet with a retired attorney who's had an illustrious career. He's also an author, and he was willing to give up his time to mentor the young men.
Great.
And so we drove down here, and they got to spend a significant amount of time with him.
That's
Anthony
great.
P. Griffin. We're very grateful. So we are trying to make our way back.
Okay, very
but
good.
obviously we need to pause for this. But you, Comrade, what is the youth serum? Because you're looking younger and younger every week. What's going on?
It's called walking 1 hour every morning.
Okay.
Yeah,
it
works magic, you know.
Okay, let's start. So Comrade wasn't here last week, so let him have his first dips with regards to the news where you're at.
Well, the news where I am, it's become apparent that the commander-in-chief in the United States cares more about how his hair looks than whether he's going to bring this war to a resolution. Whether he cares about how the war is impacting the rest of the world, including the country that he is supposed to be governing, in terms of the cost of living, you know? But it seems to me he is revealing what his priorities are. I mean, it's not an insignificant thing when somebody goes to that bother to come out with another hairdo that he knows everybody's going to be talking about. I mean, I don't know what else to say. So we live, but at the end of the day, something has to happen because the midterms are coming. I do not believe that all of the Republicans are willing to risk sinking because of somebody who is term barred and knows that he will not be running for a third term. So in terms of his priorities, are very Trump-centered right now. And it's just a question of time when his own party makes him know that we cannot allow this war to go on until September, October, when the midterms are in November. Over to you, sis.
Comrade, I think you have, at this point, and maybe justifiably so, more
optimism.
Yes, more optimism in these people ever doing the right thing. Something that was very striking that happened just a few days ago during the confirmation vote for Todd Blanche for Attorney General for the United States of America was to see Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, who has already been primaried by Trump. He supported, his opponent because he wanted him out. So on the one hand, you can say you have nothing else to lose, like you're leaving the Senate. have a little bit of a backbone. And to see him actually crying while he made his remarks and then voted for Todd Blanche, talking about his struggle with voting for Todd Blanche, but nonetheless,
Still voted.
still voting for him. And that vote was 50-49. So if he had chosen to go against Todd Blanche, he would not have been confirmed as the attorney general. And I'm watching this and I'm going, I know they're surveilling us all over the place. This has been an exercise this weekend with the people I'm traveling with, just seeing the number of flock cameras all over the place. So do they have something on all of these people where even when they are deeply convicted that the choice they're about to make is not the right one, nonetheless, they go along with that wrong choice? So do the Republicans really, will they ever get to a place where they say enough is enough for Donald Trump? Like, what is it? Because protecting pedophiles wasn't it. Tearing down the East Wing with no repercussions wasn't it. Bankrupting the American military, where their generals are saying we're out of ammunition, has not been it. And then he's publicly come out and said, I am taking national treasures and I don't intend to leave. So what is going to be that line that finally is like, oh, this is a bridge too far? Beyond that, what is happening in my neck of the woods? Data centers. It is amazing how 2 years ago, most of us had never heard of that term, data center. And now with Abbott, he just gave another 30 million, whatever, to grant to welfare to Elon Musk. Data centers are springing up in Texas like flowers after April showers.
Okay. In the UK, there's been the talk of Cambridge University, who has gone out of his way to push out his youngest black academic. He's been accused of plagiarism. He was found not guilty, but Rupert Murdoch's consortium of outlets have decided this was a bone too juicy to let go of. And eventually the guy, under the pressure of media scrutiny, has decided to resign. So now most of the high-placed academics that we have in the British educational sector are out. So how that pans out in the course of time, we don't know yet. But he was supposed to be a gem, but they've decided he had to go.
Comrade, you have to say his name. You can't just say he.
Sorry, his name. Sorry. Wow. Yeah. General rule of journalism. He is Professor Jason Arday. Arday is spelled Arday, and he's been gotten rid of. So that
Cambridge is to blame. I mean, obviously, the disproportionate number of professors that are African or African descent, the numbers are abysmal. I was reading something like, is it 150 out of 25,000 or something like that? It's preposterous. But that does not that does not mean that you just pick somebody who it appears you did not do adequate vetting, because some of the things you're reading are completely nonsensical. There's nobody in the world that can run 30 marathons in 35 days. So if you had read something like that, would that not
have
bother
flashed
you?
red flags? Yeah.
And you do further inquiries? I mean, if you raise $5 million for charity, it's significant. It must be documented. It must have been reported. So you're telling me that you at Cambridge, you could not investigate these things? I don't understand. There are many, many qualified academics out there who are African or African descent who would have fit the position that you wanted to hire somebody for at Cambridge. So, I mean, I don't blame this guy as much as I blame Cambridge and the hiring process. So it's fitting that some of them have to go, as well as the professor resigning as well.
Yeah.
But the problem is, you know how the enemies of Africa and Africans racialize everything and they put collective blame. So now many qualified Africans may now not get positions that they deserve, not only at Cambridge, but many other universities around the world. And that's the only major problem I have with a story like this.
So speaking of stories, let's go to our stories for this week because I'm minded of the time. The first one comes from Radio France International. I hope it doesn't trigger good comrade, but it's the reason why we're here. And it is that the Ugandan military honors Netanyahu's brother with Entebbe Memorial Statue. Uganda's military has unveiled a monument to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's older brother, who was killed during a hostage rescue operation in the East African country in 1976. There's the statue, and the statue of Jonathan Netanyahu holding a assault rifle was unveiled on Saturday by Uganda military chief General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who said he commissioned the monument to pay tribute to the soldiers' courage. Kainerugaba is the oldest child of Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni and widely seen as a possible successor since Museveni's re-election in January. The statue had been installed outside the Entebbe airport terminal in the town of Entebbe, where Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Netanyahu was shot dead as he led an Israeli commandos on a mission to rescue 106 passengers who had been taken hostage on an Air France flight. He was the only Israeli commando killed in the mission. So, could you give us a background as to why Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan was in Uganda at the time and your take on it, comrade?
All right. So, I hope we don't spend too much time on this story, and I'll tell you why. Because this is a diversionary story. What would be the purpose of having a story like this when the elephant in the room is very obvious? And the elephant is that Israel has been engaged in war crimes for the last several years now. Israel has committed a genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Israel is engaged in ongoing war crimes against the people of Iran, continuing in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in Lebanon. Right? So obviously the primary purpose of this story is to divert from that elephant in the room, which I just enumerated, the crimes they engage in right now. That's the first part. The second part, of course, this is what you call house Negroism at its highest level, where the Ugandan dictator, General Museveni, and the deputy dictator, his son, General Muhoozi, are trying to buy time and longevity for their tottering regime, following the theft of the election in January from Bobby Wine, Robert Kyagulanyi, who defeated him, and he just refused to relinquish power. And what is the proof that he was defeated? Months after the election, they've yet to post the results on the official Electoral Commission website. Up to date, election was in January. They just said he won by this percent. Boom. But they cannot even
give us the breakdown,
convincing lies or fabrications, convincing enough to post on their own website from each of the polling stations. Think about it. So now you have that part that you read that says after Museveni won in January. You see the propaganda there without adding anything other, that it was disputed, it was rigged, etc., etc. So that now becomes like accepted gospel as part of the thing. But part of the house Negroism is to appeal to the U.S. indulgence. And in order to do that, you do something to make Israel happy. And that's what they're doing. And the headline is misleading. Ugandan military honors Netanyahu. It is not the Ugandan military. It is Museveni and his son Muhoozi. I am quite convinced that given a little spark in Uganda, the same military, which is allegedly honoring Netanyahu, will be chasing Museveni and his son out of Uganda. And I won't be surprised if this happens in the course of the next several months or so. They just need that right spark. So they engage in step in, fetch it, house Negroism, massa, as Malcolm said, massa, is we sick? That's what they engage in. So that's my response to this article.
Sister?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Just taking a quick break here on the African News Review podcast, but don't go anywhere. If you're enjoying our deep dive into the real stories behind the headlines, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern, we're here to debunk the myths and bring you the truth about Africa. Want to help spread the word? Share this podcast with your friends and leave us a review. It goes a long way in helping others discover the real Africa. Without further ado, let's get back to setting the record straight.
Again, the power of journalism and the importance of us never just reading a story and not taking it as an invitation to go a little further. So for our listeners, our viewers, you might want to go back and revisit, well, who are these other characters they're talking about? Idi Amin. What was the stance that actually most African countries took at the time in terms of supporting the Palestinian Liberation Authority, as the PLO, as opposed
organization.
As opposed to organization, as opposed to Israel. Understanding, again, the issue of sovereignty. It's okay when Western entities, Israel being Western, and because those leaders are not Jewish, they're actually people from Europe, coming into another country and just having their way. But when it's time for their own sovereignty, then that should be respected. Understanding why, to the point that Comrade was making, the diversion, right? But also the way that they're using this, if you will, to get Israeli backing Museveni and his son, and start to position his own son as quote unquote a successor. But you know what? That statue is going to be torn down. I don't make a lot of predictions, but mark my words that we are going to sooner rather than later just see that thing coming down. But yes, the whole notion of it, as I was reading this article, I was thinking of Carter G. Woodson. Not only because our minds are not decolonized, will a Negro go and look for a back door, like Carter G. Woodson said. He said if there's no back door, they'll go carve out one. So in this article, you're talking about the courage of this white man, this Polish man. He's not Jewish to begin with. Who invaded
his space.
But you're not talking about the dozens, and they remain nameless, of Ugandan officers and army people who got killed. Their lives are less than. We must elevate. And with everything Uganda has going on right now, what you need to do is waste money to elevate a white man who was courage. Where is your own courage? So anyway, let's move on from the story, but still important
to
use this to understand the propaganda of the media and how they will always start to normalize certain things. And they're playing games with us because they count on us being too lazy to go and look for the underlying stories.
Very good. That's a very good point you make.
Okay. Speaking of diversionary tactics and...
Can I just say one last thing really quickly?
Yeah, go on.
What they could have covered in this is also Kizza Besigye, right? Is that how you say his last name? Who had been a medical doctor who used to take care of Museveni, who ran against him in 2001, 2006, 2011, 2016. Of course, we're not talking about Bobby Wine anymore. That's ancient history already. And the fact that he was seized and somehow Kenya has been playing a lot of really dirty games. He was seized in Kenya and forcibly returned to Uganda and been held on charges, which we know are politically motivated. And then he collapsed in court on July 29, 2026. So just a couple of days ago, he collapsed. He's supposedly in the ICU. They will not let his sister, who is a doctor, see him. And none of that's being mentioned while we're talking about the courage of this imposter Jew. Okay, let's carry on.
No, but I agree with you totally. And to add to the house Negroism of Museveni, this is the same Museveni who some years ago told the Atlantic magazine that I've never blamed the white man for colonizing Africa. I've never blamed the white man for taking slaves. If you're stupid, you should be enslaved. This is the same guy that, in fact,
he
ironically,
went to the same school as Kanye West.
Yeah, absolutely.
The school of Negro, because that Kanye made those kind of statements as well.
Absolutely. And they hosted Kanye West, by the way, I think it was a couple of years ago in Uganda. Museveni had State House.
Can't make
So,
this up.
like mine,
Can't make
right?
this up.
Okay, so speaking of diversionary tactics and normalization, there's another story in Radio Deutsche Welle, and it's about the International Criminal Court. When I read the story, I was like, what are you doing? But let's see if we can all make sense of it. And it's that, why do most African countries stay with the ICC? The story is written by Martina Shivoski. A new wave of African withdrawals has swept through the International Criminal Court. Chad turned his back on the court after 3 juntas-led states in the Sahel exited, but most African countries still trust The Hague. So, the establishment of the International Criminal Court in 2002 was seen as a breakthrough in a global fight against war crimes, genocide, crimes against humanity, yet criticisms from part of Africa is almost as old as ICC itself. Time and time again, the court has been accused of targeting Africa in one-sided manner. Recently, the criticism has grown louder again and culminating in veritable waves of withdrawals. So, what is your take on this story when you read it? I know what mine is, but let's hear yours first.
All right. So obviously, I mean, the ICC, and it's sort of an arm of the United Nations. So it's an aspirational organization, just as the United Nations is an aspirational organization. And unless the United Nations itself is reformed to address the contemporary issues, it's almost like when the United States Constitution was formed, right? Who were the people at the table? You see? Who were the people at the table? You can't tell me that you are only worthy of amendment. We'll address your issues and needs and concerns by subsequent amendments, right? You are not there.
Yeah, true.
Constitution is foundational, right?
Okay.
So
okay.
The question is, does the U.S. need a new constitution that is actually foundational to all the people whose interests it's supposed to address and protect? The same thing with the United Nations. Who was at the table when the UN was originally formed? So obviously, every branch and every arm of the UN is going to be semi-compromised as well. So in the case of the ICC, you have the major powers, including such as the United States, not being a member, but wanting the ICC to function when it's targeting people that are not friends of the United States, such as when the ICC went after Gaddafi in Libya. Obviously, the United States supported that because then it gives them the rationale to demonize and to attack and ultimately to kill the person like Gaddafi. But then you have, on the other hand, you have the flip side. When the people in a country like Sudan are not opposed when a person like dictator Bashir is indicted by the ICC. You see? When some of the warlords in Eastern Congo, who, by the way, were supported by Western entities, were committing all those atrocities, and some of those leaders got indicted. And in fact, some ended up being tried at the ICC and getting long prison sentences. So it's not a mystery that many of the African countries are governed by rulers who don't represent the interests and are in many cases sustained by the outside powers, that ordinary people in Africa would want an organization that can actually indict them for war crimes or crimes against humanity, and perhaps restrain the domestic terrorism against African people. So I don't believe in throwing out the entire baby with the bathwater, right? It needs to be reformed, just like the UN itself needs to be reformed. Because if you totally eliminate it, then there would be no entity that would try to constrain people like Bashir, people like Museveni himself. In fact, let me give you a quick story on Museveni, and then I pass it on to Sister. Museveni could have been indicted by the ICC. The Congo in, I think it was 2003, 2004. Or five, right. Referred
2005.
What would amount to war crimes, but this case was sent to the International Court of Justice, ICC, because it was the killing and destruction caused by Uganda's army when it invaded Congo multiple times. And the ICJ found Uganda liable and even assessed at that time, I think it was negotiated down, $6 billion compensation, reparation. So the Congo took the same set of evidence to the ICC, and the ICC started investigating Museveni. And there's no way they could not have indicted him, given that Uganda was already found liable by the ICJ. So what did Museveni do? He picked up the phone and called Kofi Annan and asked him to block a criminal investigation against him by the ICC. And this story is in the Wall Street Journal, by the way. Unfortunately, I forget the date. I think it was maybe October 1, 2008, something like that. And Annan told him, I don't have the powers to block such an investigation. But somebody who has those powers, and it can only be a permanent member of the Security Council, blocked that investigation. And that is why Museveni was not indicted. So yes, it has all these horrific political compromises that undermines its potential. But do we totally just throw it out? I don't think so. Just like I'm not saying we should throw out the United Nations.
Different question to Sister. Why does this headline, why do most African countries stay with the ICC? Why do you think they went with this headline as opposed to just writing what the pros and cons is with regards to them? As a lawyer, you're mute.
Oh, did we lose her? Did we lose Sister?
No, she's
no,
on.
I'm here.
She's
no,
on.
I'm here. We know that the ICC is under attack by the United States of America. They want it completely dissolved. And so to the extent that you can continue to chip away at its legitimacy, and right now the ICC, you look at primarily you're looking at the majority of the countries that have signed on to the ICC are African nations. So if you can get the more African nations, for whatever reasons, to pull out, it further legitimizes the entity, which would bring about its downfall. That would be my initial reading of it. Having said that, there are very clearly arguments for African countries to say we no longer want to be a part of this, but to Comrade's comments in the explanation as to why African countries might choose to stay, because hey, it might be imperfect, but it's one more way to maybe bring some justice. There are arguments on both sides, but I do want to just say this for those listening. We know that the ICC is a relatively young entity, right? It was established in 1998 by the Rome Statute. It didn't start operating till 2000.
Yeah.
But let's look at what it has accomplished in that time, which might explain why some African nations, including the Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and all, are like, hey, we're out. 125 countries are parties to that Rome Statute today. Of course, not the U.S., not China, not Russia, not India, not Israel. So the world's most powerful military and economic Central African Republic.
Liberia. Thank you. I mean, I just want people to go away with the concept that prior to 2023, the ICC or ICJ was not on the lips of many people. But all of a sudden, since the dragging to court of the Israelis, all of a sudden, everybody has an understanding of what the ICJ and only now are we now talking about the idea of why is it that we have this court in the first place? And Marco Rubio has come out, and I don't know why people have that bravery to say, you know what, we're going to destroy a legal instrument that has supposed to make the world a fairer place. But, you know, it is what it is. And speaking of making the world a fairer place, and so speaking about the concept of people being free to do whatever it is they want to do, we go to Morocco, and it is that the king who outfoxed, and this story comes from the Financial Times. It's titled "The King Who Outfoxed Pedro Sanchez." Pedro Sanchez is the president of Spain. Morocco's absolute ruler, Mohammed VI, the sixth, turned Spain's border into leverage over Madrid. Morocco's all-powerful monarch and Europe's most prominent left-wing leader made for uneasy bedfellows in a relationship of mutual dependence. But the migration crisis that erupted at Spain's borders has signaled where King Mohammed VI holds leverage over Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. Although Morocco's economy is 1/10 the size of Spain's, the two countries are bound by a dense web of commercial ties, yet they diverge on big geopolitical issues. Mohammed VI has cultivated close ties with Donald Trump, while Sanchez has become one of the U.S. president's main antagonists in Europe. So, you've read the story. Comrade, what's your take about what happened in Ceuta and Melilla, Ceuta in particular, last week, where 60,000 people crossed the border into, quote-unquote, Spain?
All right. So, I mean, the story, obviously, in a broad sense, is completely upside down, right? But it's not unique in that it's upside down. It's a story like this. If you go to any one of these corporate media outlets, Financial Times, New York Times, you go to BBC, you go to CNN, it would just be a different variation of the same. That Morocco now has some clout, and obviously this is nothing new. And what is the clout? The clout is that if we don't like what you're doing in Spain, as it impacts some of the things that are in our interest, and one of them, of course, is Morocco's occupation or colonization of the Sahrawi Republic, aka Western Sahara. If we don't like the fact that in 2021, the leader of Polisario went to Spain to get medical treatment, and we want to teach you a lesson that something like this should never happen before, when you allowed Brahim Ghali to be treated in a hospital in Spain, we're going to unleash refugees to come to Ceuta. And on that occasion, I think it was 8,000 that were allowed to go by Morocco.
Yeah.
And on this occasion, of course, tens of thousands, right? So why do I say the story is upside down? The story is upside down is because we are not looking at it from the perspective of these human beings who are just numbers in a situation like this. On the earlier occasion in 2021, there were 8,000. On this occasion, 70,000 to 80,000. Numbers, not human beings. So we don't have to address the question, why are they going there in the first place? What do they not have in their own countries that allow them to do something like that? And then when you start going into that, obviously then you must write another story. You must write about the fact that many of them are being kicked off the land. So now they cannot even grow their food. Why? Because the land is being sold to some corporation which is getting money from the World Bank and the IMF to do commercial export agriculture,
Farming.
not even satisfying the local needs for the population in those countries. And then you would have to address the fact that these countries get loans from the World Bank and the IMF. And one of the conditions is that you fire teachers, you fire people in public services, you don't invest in the hospitals, you don't invest in the school. So they're not even going to school now because now you have to pay school fees, whereas in the past it was being subsidized by the state. And that's why they only use the numbers, 8,000, 70,000, 80,000, and avoid doing the human stories. They become objects, you see? And that's why you can have an upside down story such as this one. But you know what? They will keep coming because people don't just, well, some do actually. Some just lay down and die. But some in the quest for continue to live, they do desperate things like crossing the Mediterranean. Some of them make it, some of them die. And we will continue with this upside down approach until maybe one day they're in a position to make it impossible for the rest of the powers that be to ignore their stories.
Okay, sister.
Thank you. That's the one part I support Morocco on that one. I support that.
Yeah, upside down. Okay.
Him, who stole the show during the Justice Iran.
Yeah.
What did the cameras positioned ahead of time? Like this.
Yes.
And the boy's name is Kana.
Yama. Okay. Yes. So we're about to take on our last story. But before then, next week we'll be speaking to Professor. Can you hear me? Wow. We'll be speaking to Professor Allimadi, the author of Pan-African History. And so join us for that next week. It promises to be a fruitful conversation. We had one last week with the great Vijay Prashad, and it was truly remarkable, the insights we gain. And this story also, all of these stories are part of what is deemed in the United States as Black August, but it's also the year of Africa in the United Nations. August itself is considered, August 1960 was considered the year of Africa. So to commemorate that effect, we're going to be doing lots of African theme stories as if we don't already do. So, and if this is your first time here, do consider subscribing to the channel, becoming a member, join our Patreon. And so let's go to our last story. Comrade has been warning us about this for a while, and I think he is a fortune teller that we should actually, subscribe to. And it's that in South Africa, again, the story comes from the Financial Times, and its headline, South African courts hear challenge to land seizure land seizure law opposed by the U.S. Democratic Alliance Party seeks to scrap ANC policy used by Trump to justify refugee status for white South Africans. So a South African court is hearing a challenge against the country's land seizure, reigniting a political charge debate over legislation that U.S. President Donald Trump used to justify cutting aid and creating a controversial refugee program. Where's the part I went? Okay. Jordan Hill-Lewis, the pro-business DA leader, told FT the party hoped the court will strike down the destructive, in inverted commas, legislation, sending a clear signal that South Africa respects private property rights as the bedrock of all investments, economic growth, and prosperity. Ramaphosa's African National Congress, a former Liberation Party, has long said updating the law is needed to redress the economic inequality exacerbated by mass expropriation of land from black farmers under apartheid. Millions of non-white South Africans are forcibly displaced from their land under apartheid 3 decades into democracy. 3/4 of the country's farmland remains in the hands of white South Africans who make up less than 10% of the population. Comrade.
Yeah. All right. So I'll do a quick commentary, and then I'll tell you where the real story really lies.
Ooh.
And this is actually a challenge to my sisters and brothers in South Africa who are Syrian. And I know there are many who are Syrians, but we rarely hear from them. They're not the ones that, media focus on. Media focus on those, those little bandits who are attacking fellow Africans on the street. But I think they make an insignificant percentage of the number of Africans in South Africa. South African Africans, right? So I know there are many serious ones. So I'm going to address those in a minute or so. But first of all, this should come as no surprise that the Democratic Alliance, apartheid-like party, is opposing this policy, which has not even been applied yet, right?
Yep.
The government has the power under some limited circumstances, and I don't know why it should be limited circumstances, to seize land without compensation if it believes it is just and equitable. We have just been told by the same Financial Times that the European population that is less than 10%, I believe it's 8%,
10%,
controls 75% of the land. So in which universe would this not be just and equitable, right? And then you have the leader of the Democratic Alliance, and his photograph appears there in the article, and he's talking about, this would be unconstitutional in terms of how it impacts private property. All right, so now, in terms of, because, it would be unconstitutional not to compensate them. All right, so let's open up the whole conversation on compensation. We'll compensate you. But first, let's compensate the people you stole the land from with the native land. Let's compensate them in all the years that you were earning money that should be going to them, right? And then we talk about compensation and see where the net result actually ends up. And I'm not talking just in theory, we compensate them. I'm talking
practical.
In practice, practical, and with solid numbers. There's a South African who lived a remarkable life that not enough people know of. And he wrote, I think, 2 or 3 books. He got to meet W.E. Du Bois. He traveled in the U.S. He was very enterprising, too. One of his books, he actually had a manuscript or had a limited edition, and he traveled to the U.S., and W.B. Du Bois arranged speaking engagements for him, and he raised more money, and he published a larger print-size book, able to print more copies of the book. And his name is Sol Plaatje, Solplaatje, I believe, Tje. I may have 1 or 2 letters wrong. I hope you can correct me before the show is over. But his book reveals something very interesting. When they were stealing the land, they had debate in the South African parliament, even when the Africans were not allowed to speak in the parliament. So you had the Europeans speaking, and they were documenting the size of the land that was going to be stolen from farmer so-and-so. So we have the name of the African that the land was stolen from. We have the location because it's in the parliamentary note. We'll be able to document and find their descendants and make sure they get adequate compensation, not even based on speculation. This is a PhD dissertation if some South African wants to do it. But more importantly, it's an investigative series. If there's a serious public newspaper in South Africa, you can do this as a series. Go to Parliament, the notes are there. Go there before they shred these notes, the minutes of those parliamentary debates. It has the name, the land, the acreage and the location. Document that, quantify the amount of money their descendants are owned, and then let the Europeans start talking about compensation. So that, to me, is the real story. From now on, when we see the propaganda twist, we should try to decipher and expose what the real story should be here. And on this occasion, this is the real story.
Okay. Sister, take us home.
Because you can't come, find who's going to take you.
And you don't even need
Any kind of
African Forum. The African Forum. Yes. Yeah. What can we do other than educate our people, inform our people to make better choices? And the reason they will use those labels is they know our people don't tend to do the heavy lifting, which is Afri Forum. Who is there? Why? What are they about? That kind of stuff. We don't. We still do, lip service. We've seen the name, we're not looking at the ingredients. We want to make a meal out of it. But that said, we've come to the end of the...
Our people change when they're provided the right guidance. I mean, the South Africa has many moments of revolutionary change and retrenchment. When Mandela was leading the struggle in the 1960s, he realized that these peaceful protests were not going to work. So he adopted a different strategy, armed struggle. And even though he was incarcerated, Umkhonto continued the armed struggle, supported by many African countries, eventually supported by Cuba in Quito, Cuanava. And they changed the course of history. So now that we just have, because we have Ramaphosa, that Ramaphosa is not a permanent condition. And the Democratic Alliance is not a permanent condition, just as apartheid was not a permanent condition. So they're going to, at some point, inspire the correct remedy for South Africans to address that issue. Yeah.
That said, again, I must thank you both for coming through, as always.
You for hosting.
Thank you. Again, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing and supporting the channel. We aim to continue to bring you Afrocentric information so that we make better choices with regards to governance, democracy, your human rights, which I don't think anyone can give you since you're bestowed with it from day one. That said, we have, Comrade, any final thoughts?
A luta continua. Support this platform and see you next week.
Sister?
And sister,
Please
safe drive. Safe drive as you make it back home.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Malcolm X tried to get African.
Malcolm X tried, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, so my email for people to reserve the book, if they're interested, is mallimadi@gmail.com. So that's mallimadi@gmail.com. And it's coming out the first week of September. The title is The Day Biafra Died. And it's based mostly using U.S. documents from the Office of the Historian at the State Department, and also using documents from the New York Times archive.
So yes, you've heard it. The email address is on the screen at the moment. So do email your interests and let's support the brother. This is information we should have, and it's important that we start writing the books by us, for us.
Yes.
Yeah, by us, for us. Yeah. Okay. Until next week, it's good night and God bless. That's a wrap for this week on the African News Review Podcast. We hope you are leaving with a clearer, more truthful picture of Africa. Remember, every story has another side, and we're here to uncover it. Don't forget to join us next Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern as we continue to challenge the narratives and reclaim Africa's voice. If you've enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep seeing Africa for what it truly is.